So Riot Phroxzon made a tweet this morning about a very divisive topic in the League of Legends community regarding losers queue. So I have some unscripted ideas about this subject, but let's just read what he has to say. And then we'll go over the tweet again and I'll say my thoughts about what he said here, each idea. So, we're not intentionally putting bad players on your team to make you lose more. Even if we assume that premise, wouldn't we want to give you good players so you stop losing? For rank, we match you on your rating and that's all. If you've won a lot and start losing, it's because you're playing against better players and aren't at that level anymore. It's really hard to read this and not laugh. It's not because we match you with all the inters and put all the smurfs on the enemy team. For 99.9% of the people reading this, even if you think you're playing perfectly and post a good KDA screenshot with the rest of your team hinting, I promise you that if a good player reviews your games, there's hundreds of things that you could have done differently that could have changed the trajectory of the game. Sure, there are games where your teammates play poorly. That's just the nature of 5v5 game. In the long run, you're the only common factor and the only responsible for your rating, and the only one responsible for the rating is you. Ha! If you took an unwinnable game and replaced it with any challenger in your spot, it would probably result in a win. A good non-giving up attitude, see the top post on front of page Reddit right now. A growth mindset, investing in a good coach, asking reputable people for advice will help make your relationship with League a lot better. There are 5 potential giver-uppers on the enemy team and only 4 on yours. Don't make it 5. I mainly wanted to make this post because in the process of helping people debug their accounts, there are so many people who legitimately believe we're putting them in losers queue that it's driving me crazy. Some observations from coaching over the last 12 years. Most players play too conservatively with a lead. Playing on the edge to draw pressure and waste the jungler's time, while not throwing is extremely impactful. Playing for KD so you can post a screenshot of doing well while your team feeds so you feel better is not going to help you get better. Review every death. 95% of deaths are avoidable until you hit every high ranks. Find the root cause of why you're dying. Are you managing the waving correctly and are getting a ward out for a common gang timing? Are you overcommitting to fights when they are respawning? Are you flipping it to crash a silent when an objective is spawning? Play to your win conditions while identifying and disrupting theirs. Find which lanes are volatile, most likely to carry the game from either side and prioritize your resources there. If your top lane is some swingy matchup and you get them ahead, they're gonna create so much pressure for you that the game becomes very easy to navigate. Wait, there's it? Didn't he type 5? Never mind. These are 3. Okay, I thought he had 2 more ideas. So let's go over this. We're not intentionally putting bad players on your team to make you lose more. Actually, I think they are. But not they personally. There's a system designed to do so once you reach a certain high win rate. And it's putting you to 50%. That's the goal. If you play long enough, whether you're good or not, even if you have a high-low account, all accounts, as long as you play on them and spam games on them, will reach an average of 50%. Now, it might be a perfect 50%. It would round up to 55 or maybe 45, somewhere around that. But it always leads up to 50%, and when you're on to 50%, every game feels like a flip. How many of you can recognize this feeling? How many of you know this regarding your elo? Including your smurf accounts. If you're a high elo player and you're smurfing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if we assume that premise, wouldn't you want to give you good players so you stop losing? No, that's the point. Because the moment I win, I will stop playing your game. And if I stop playing your game, you lose a player. You want to keep me tilted, you want to keep me spamming games, you want to keep me playing more games in order for me to be a player in your game. How many of you feel the need to play one more game on a loss? And what ends up happening is that if you go lower than 50%, the system actually gives you that free win. And it's not that you're playing necessarily better, it's not necessarily that the opponents are worse, your team is specifically better and you feel it, you just know it. For ranked, we match you on your rating and that's all. That's not even true. Because on blue side, you know on average, you will have lower ranking and everyone knows this. Or if you don't, you just don't pay attention to your average rankings. What ends up happening sometimes is on blue side, you will have lower visible rankings, but with higher win rates. So what does that mean? It means that you might have a smurf. So instead of a player being actually, I don't know, Emerald 4 with 70% win rate, he might be an actual diamond player, and that destabilizes the system and it destabilizes the potential outcome. So let's get back to that. It's because you're playing against better. So for rank, we match you on your rating and that's all. If you've won a lot and start losing, it's because you are playing against better players and aren't at the level anymore. That's not even true, because you watch streamers. I play on Smurfs all the time. It's simply at one point my win rate gets so high that every game feels harder because they have more out-of-field players. The opponents are just higher rating, of course, and it's becoming increasingly harder to win even on a silver account. Even in a silver account, if I take an iron account and get a high win rate, those silver players are not going to be better than a challenger player, right? But they will still make it so hard that you will struggle so much that you might still feel that pressure. We're not talking about your average player, we're talking about a smurf experiencing this. So even that's a lie. Anyway, for 99.9% of people reading this, even if you think you're playing perfectly and post a good KDA screenshot with the rest of your team hinting, I promise you that if a good player reviews your game, there's hundreds of things that you could have done differently that could have changed the trajectory of the game. That's irrelevant. That's strictly irrelevant. When people talk about losers queue, they are not saying they are playing perfectly. They are not saying, or at least some are not saying that. They are not saying they couldn't have played better. They are saying they have a strict worse team, they have lower chances of winning, and they have a negative chance to impact the game. What does that mean? It means that if someone has 60% chances of winning, they'll just win 6 out of 10 games. If you put those same players in a game to play 10 times, a team will win 6 times, most likely. That's what we're talking about. We're not saying some players are playing perfectly. We're not saying we play perfectly. We're just saying that we're noticing visible advantages a team has, whether they have higher LPE or we have more out-of-field players. That's all there is to it. And it doesn't mean that if you're in loser's queue you can't win. It doesn't mean if you're in winner's queue you will win necessarily by default, because what can happen is that you can be put in winner's queue. Your mid laner who's bored suddenly decides to play some ZTP first strike, and the enemy team has a Vladimir with Ignite. The ZTP first strike gets bored of poking blood and him sustaining, and then all instant tower. He doesn't have Ignite, he dies, and then Vladimir is an unstoppable monster. And you know you've lost to objectively worse players, but with better champions. Just because you're in winner's queue doesn't mean you'll necessarily win. It just means you feel the game itself. You feel you have more control, more agency. The players are playing worse while having better champions. And you will most likely win. Doesn't mean you'll always win. It just means you'll most likely win. So again, winner's queue and loser's queue doesn't guarantee a win or a loss. It just has higher chances because there's always the human element. There's always something that one can do differently to impact the game, and that's what we're talking about. Anyway, let's get back to his points. Sure, there are games where your teammates play poorly, that's just the nature of 5v5 game. Sure, in the long run, you're the only common factor and the only one responsible for you, for your rating is you. God damn it, it's the second time I cannot read this. If you took an unwinnable game and replayed it with any challenger in your spot, it would probably result in a win. So, that's a straw man. What if I'm a challenger and I'm still struggling in loser's queue? What if I see challenger players struggling on lower elo and have loss streaks after they've been put in loser's queue? And how that happens? Well, I think most accounts around loser's queue are balanced around toxic players. That's what I think. And mostly, what does toxic means? It means people who are reported. So most of the time, it's really easy to balance around jungle because jungle has no agency except lanes. And if you put lower MMR lanes, you just throw in the jungler. And if you just put constantly a higher MMR jungler and you balance it around the losing lanes, you will just most likely influence that game so that the jungler with a higher MMR than his opponent, than his teammates, but with a lower average MMR on his team, will just lose against the enemy team. It's so easy. It always happens on blue side. That's how I think they do it for the most part. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory and there's no real proof besides some patents. I think if you look in the comments, so for instance, there's a community note here. Riot Games has this shit, which is a patent for not necessarily loser's queue. It's just a toxic queue, if that's the case. There are some things that Riot has done in order to influence the matchmaking. And if you are to listen to the conspiracy theories to the end, it's simply the reason Phroxzon is posting this, it's because Tencent doesn't allow them, but I don't even want to go to that level. I just want to go and comment what most people understand and feel in their games. And sure, what he's saying here it's truth combined with lies. That's why it's so hard to debunk it. No shit, you can play better. Of course, lower level players will make mistakes. But what happens when challenger players experience the same thing? The same thing. Oh, anyway. And yes, and I think one of the reasons, by the way, one of the reasons they increased the dodge penalty is because they don't want people to play around it with dodges. Because that's the main way high elo players, by the way, influence their outcome, influence their MMR. Most of them dodge when they get to a certain threshold point because you're not going to win with a super bad comp with auto-field players and you see a super good comp in the enemy team. It has nothing to do with not giving up, playing too conservatively. Bro, I have really bad champions against overpowered champions. It doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter how I play, it doesn't matter if I do my clear at 340, they just have better champs. It's a simple math equation. It's not a skill issue, it's a math equation. It's science, it's literally science. You cannot influence this, it's just math. And he's saying this like it's a human factor. Yeah, some games have a human factor, obviously they do, but other games are just lost mathematically via stats. And of course you will win some because random things can happen. Someone could DC, someone could just give up, someone could just flame. But on average, statistically, this is why we speak about losers queue in terms of statistics, percentages. You will just know when a team is in losers queue and when you're in winners queue. It's so easy. And again, I'd say losers queue you're in loser's queue most of the times when you're on blue side. But hey, I have no actual proof. I just have certain experiences watching other people. Hey, I played the game 14 years. You notice some trends, okay? What else is here? I mainly wanted to make this post because in the process of having people debug their accounts, there's so many people who legitimately believe we're putting them in lose. Now, even if, let's say, this is true, why would we believe this? Why would we believe this? Why would... He's literally saying, are you actually believing you're lying, guys? Obviously, there are low elo players who are deluded and think they are perfect and so on. But at the same time, it has nothing to do with being put in our lower MMR team. And I'm not even going to talk about this because this is just, yeah, sure, it's true. But again, he's missing the point. Anyway, tell me what you guys think. Do you think loser's queue exists? I for sure know it exists. And I understand there are reasons that you think just because you're winning, it's not loser's queue, but you should look outside of your results and you should look at the systems overall. That's what I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. Who knows? Maybe I'm just deluded. Anyway, take care. See ya.